My name is Lea Ypi. I'm a professor of political theory at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Welcome to my exp. In thinking about how citizenship has historically been a vehicle of enfranchisement, it's worth thinking about the fact that the fate of citizenship has historically been bound up with the emergence and consolidation of the modern state. And of the modern state as a kind of institution that in the history of political thought has often been analyzed as an entity that is distinguished from both the governors and the governed, and that is responsible for conferring rights upon putting subjects under particular obligations. And what is distinctive about the modern state historically is that unlike the previous institutions that have given us accounts of political legitimacy, like the monarchy or the church, it is supposed to be an inclusive institution. It's supposed to be a universal institution, one that is based upon the recognition of ideals of freedom and equality, and that grants membership on the basis of these premises, that recognizes that all subjects are equal, they all have the same rights, and they have the same obligations. We know that the modern states, from its inception, has been involved in particular, the modern liberal states, has been involved in projects of colonization abroad and of domestic repression of minorities at home. But citizenship has, at the beginnings of this history at least, acted as a vehicle of inclusion insofar as the ideal of enfranchisement, of recognition of these rights and obligations, is what has motivated popular movements both within the state and abroad and outside the state in seeking recognition from these institutions. And so if we think about the moments of highlight, of affirmation of the idea of citizenship, we think about the French Revolution, for example. We think about the ideals that animated the French Revolution, freedom, equality, and fraternity or solidarity. And we think about 1848, another moment of affirmation of the idea of citizenship as a moment of struggle against authority and of recognition of the right to self-determination of peoples who try to become independent and to become republican. The question is citizenship, has citizenship ever been like this, or is this another myth that we tell, another story that we tell ourselves? And another question is citizenship still like that? And I think the answer to these two questions is slightly complicated. On the one hand, when we think about the emergence of citizenship historically, we know that there were famously critics of that account of citizenship, of the sort of French Revolutionary Republican account of citizenship as being universal and emancipatory. Most famously, Karl Marx, who in the Jewish Question wrote that, in fact, the Republican liberal conception of citizenship was based on another kind of exclusion, that on the surface, as a matter of abstract rights, it recognized and it granted rights to excluded, to disenfranchised minorities, but in fact it did that on the basis of a separation between public persona, public character, the recognition of the citizen, of the citoyen on the one hand, and the exclusion of the private lives of those citizens as bourgeois, as Marx wrote, which in fact was in tension with that inclusionary effort, with that inclusionary dynamic that characterized citizenship. So when we think about the contemporary trends, when we think about the transformation of citizenship in contemporary era, I think what's important to signal is this shift from citizenship as a process to citizenship as a kind of commodity, as a good that either one is entitled to or not, and that gets bought or sold or exchanged if one shows that one deserves. And what's really important, and that in some ways helps us to link back to what I started with, the idea that the Marxian critique of liberal citizenship, is to see how the selective way in which citizenship is deployed in contemporary politics to both exclude those who are seen as not belonging, those who are seen as not deserving to have access to the liberal state, and on the other hand, to sell citizenship to those who have money and power and who can show that they have access to this claim. So citizenship becomes a little bit like inherited status during the pre-modern era. It's no longer, as I say, it's no longer the process through which subjects get enfranchised, and becomes a claim that either one inherits or one doesn't. And if one doesn't inherit, one can then purchase it